So today I'm going to be sharing my review on A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And I want to do these like review videos on books that are just really good and like you can learn lessons from, because this is actually like a children's classic, but I learned so much from it even at 22. So I just want to share things I learned, my review. I really recommend this book. Okay, so essentially this book is about a little girl who grew up very rich, and she's very young at the start of the book. I think she's 7 years old when the book starts. I think her dad is like a captain, or like he has to like be traveling a lot and he's always on the go, so he decides to leave her at like a boarding school. It's like a little girl's seminary. So before he drops her off, like he makes sure the head of the school knows like she's used to the best things. So he kind of provides them the money, obviously, for them to provide her with like the best dresses, the best like birthday gifts when her birthday comes around. Like she gets to have her own room, her own playing room. Like he just wants her to have the best like experience at the school, and he wants her to have like the best education and all of that. And so the head of the school does not like her because of that, but either way she like does whatever the dad wants her to do because he's giving her money for it. And so this little girl Sarah in the school, he would expect her to be like very spoiled because she's rich, but she's actually not. She's very kind and very helpful. She's really motherly to like the little girls, and they just all admire her because she tells stories. Like she's a really good storyteller. My dogs are fighting, ignore that. She's a really good storyteller, and she likes to pretend a lot and like imagine things. One thing that she pretends is that she's a princess, so that's why it's called A Little Princess. She's not actually a princess, okay? So they call her the Little Princess. The girls that don't like her use it as like a bullying term, but the girls that do like her like really think of her as a princess, like they look up to her. Then of course a tragedy happens where she is no longer rich. She's like broke, like big broke. I can't really say what it is without spoiling like an important part of the story, but she loses her fortune, and so the head of the school sends her like to the attic, and she like barely feeds her. She becomes like pretty much like a servant. This is really important to the story because it kind of shows how she grows as a little girl. So I remember at the beginning of the story, this quote that she said like made me want to keep reading. She was talking to her friend, and her friend was like, "Oh, you're like so nice," and she was like, "Well, I think because I haven't had like any trials in my life, I am nice. Like what if I'm actually a horrible person because nothing bad has ever happened to me?" I'm obviously paraphrasing. It's like written much more beautiful. She's just so insightful for someone so young, and it's like, wow. The thing is, she pretends that she's a princess even while she's struggling, while everyone's mean to her. She's kind of like, well, I'm a princess, so I'm gonna treat them good even when they're not treating me good. And it's just such a good story, and obviously it has a happy ending, so I would read it. But I'm gonna actually share some of my favorite quotes that I highlighted, and then I'm gonna share like 3 little lessons that I learned. When her dad is dropping her off at the school, she says, "I don't like it, Papa," she said, "but then I dare say soldiers, even brave ones, don't really like going into battle." So just like, really? She was like 7 years old. Obviously a 7-year-old would never say that. I don't think so. But just that kind of mindset, like doing hard things even when you don't want to. And it puts into perspective like soldiers who like go out into like battle and war, they have it so much harder. Okay, and then so there's one thing about Sarah Crewe. She's never grand about herself the least bit, and you know she might be. My dog has the zoomies right now. Just please ignore that. If I was a princess, a real princess, she murmured, I could scatter largesse to the populace. But even if I am only a pretend princess, I can invent little things to do for people. Things like this. She was just as happy as if it was a largesse. I'll pretend that to do things people like is scattering largesse. I've scattered largesse. And largesse, just so you know, I actually googled it, is generosity. Okay, this is also another quote similar to the first one. Soldiers don't complain, she would say between her small shut teeth. I am not going to do it. I will pretend this is part of a war. Okay, this is literally just because I love dogs. It says, how it is that animals understand things I do not know, but it is certain that they do understand. And then this is one of the quotes that she was just like saying to herself when she was pretending to be a princess, even when everyone was mean to her. This is like one of my favorites. So it says, "You don't know that you are saying these things to a princess, and that if I chose, I would wave my hand and order you to execution. I only spare you because I am a princess, and you are a poor, unkind, vulgar old thing and don't know any better." And then the next one, while the thought held possession of her, she could not be made rude and malicious by the rudeness and malice of those around her. "A princess must be polite," she said to herself. And so when the servants, taking their tone from their mistress, were insolent and ordered her about, she would hold her head erect and reply to them with a quaint civility which often made them stare at her. Okay, this one I really like just because I have this weird thing where like I worry about enjoying things because I think about the people that aren't able to and that like are struggling. It says, "If you possess all the wealth of all the Indies, you could not set right all the discomforts in the world." So like you cannot change the world, unfortunately. It seemed as if the child were mentally living a life which held her above the rest of the world. It was as if she scarcely heard the rude and acid things said to her, or if she heard them, she did not care for them at all. Okay, so this is once when she was struggling, everyone's being mean to her, and it says, "It has been hard today. It has been hard to be a princess today, Melchizedek," she said. "It has been harder than usual. It gets harder as the weather grows colder and the streets get more sloppy. When Lavinia laughs at my muddy skirt as I passed her in the hall, I thought of something to say all in a flash, and I only just stopped myself in time. You can't sneer back at people like that if you are a princess, but you have to bite your tongue to hold yourself in. I bit mine. It was a cold afternoon, Melchizedek, and it's a cold night." Okay, this one I highlighted and underlined, so I must have really liked it. "When things are horrible, just horrible, I think as hard as ever I can of being a princess. I say to myself, I am a princess and I am a fairy one, and because I am a fairy nothing..." What? I did not use commas here. "I am a princess and I am a fairy one, and because I am a fairy, nothing can hurt me or make me uncomfortable." Almost done with the quotes here. Okay, there is this scene in this book. This might be a little spoiler, but she is very hungry and she sees someone else on the street that is even hungrier than her. She has the opportunity to like buy food and she chooses to share it. So this quote, okay, "If I'm a princess," she was saying, "if I'm a princess, when they were poor and driven from their thrones, they always shared with the populace. If they met one poorer and hungrier than themselves, they always shared." Okay, and this quote, so she is very smart and she has a friend that is not very smart. And she says, "Perhaps," she said, "to be able to learn things quickly isn't everything. To be kind is worth a great deal to other people. Lots of clever people have done harm and have been wicked." Those are all the quotes that I highlighted. And so here are 3 things that I learned from A Little Princess. Number 1, being strong and doing hard things. And that showed in the quote about the soldier. Like, she was struggling and she was doing things that she didn't want to do, but she was strong and she was just like, "I'm gonna do it." Like, soldiers do hard things, that I can do this, you know. Number 2, I put what would a princess do, because every time she was in a situation when she wanted to like lash out and act like how other people were treating her, which is totally understandable, she would think like, if I was a princess, like princesses act this way, so I'm not gonna respond back to mean comments that other people make to me. That's just super biblical actually, about like praying for your enemies and for those that persecute you. And it was just like, I felt like it was very practical how you could do that. Like, anyone, you could just pretend that you're a princess and think, what would a princess do? And it would just help you so much, like in the way that you respond to things. And then number 3, acting like a princess even when others don't treat you like it. When like she was a servant and everybody was treating her horribly, she was just like, "I'm a princess, like you don't even know who you're talking to." And she just kept her head up high. It's just a really nice story. I really recommend it. There's just so much to learn from it. This is definitely a book that I will be rereading, and I just really enjoyed it. Hope you're able to read it.